Hey Lisa, can you hear me?
Yes, hi Glenn. Oh
It's
my
really good to see you.
goodness. It is so awesome. I mean, I was thinking to myself, what's this going to be like? Speaking to Glenn Hurlow after all these after all these years. But
Yeah.
yeah, for a number of reasons. It's great to see you.
Oh, thanks. It's really good to see you as well. And wow, I was so impressed. After you sent me the link, I looked up your site and watched the conversation you had with my old roommate, Rian, and really enjoyed that. So that was cool. Oh, you've done
I'm
really
glad you
well.
enjoyed it. Thanks, Glenn. I am enjoying being myself. Finally, even though I'm lucky, all these years I have been able to express myself. So I feel
Right.
I'm fortunate, for that.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, I feel very much the same. I think we've always been ourselves because it's very difficult not to be yourself,
Mm.
even though you don't really know who that is for most of your life. But we worry too much about whether ourselves are being liked, accepted, all of those things by other people. So when you say I'm enjoying being myself, that's where I am as well in my 40s now, because you kind of like, okay, this is who I am. If people don't like it,
That's
it's more their
okay.
issue than my issue. Yeah.
Exactly. So everybody, for those of you watching, this is the Glenn Hurlow that I know. His name is Glenn Hurlow, by the way. I don't think I said that before. I met Glenn in high school. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I got to know, or from afar, and yeah, a all round good guy. I couldn't find anything to top that cliche. And Glenn's never heard me say this about him, but he was just in high school. You can vouch for whether he's still the same person now. In high school, he was just this all round. He was a good guy. So Glenn, good guy. How? Just for the benefit of everyone watching, won't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. And I think I need to talk to you more often. It feels good to be called a good guy. Doesn't happen every day. Yeah, because most days I feel like a kid trapped in an adult's body, and here I am. I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I lead a technology team at UCT. I'm a leader in my church. I'm a trail runner and all of these things. And I still kind of think, well, I was kind of waiting to become an adult and, do these things in my life. And I wake up and this is what's happened. So yeah, that's a brief précis of who Glenn is at the moment.
Wow, and such a beautiful picture. Just like I remember in high school. Now, you might not know this, Glenn. So I'll forgive you if you're a little bit shocked, or if we need to give you a little sugar water. But when Glenn, when Glenn and a couple of other students came from Hillcrest to Helderberg, I'd already been there for 2 years. So in standard eight, grade 10, no, was it grade 10?
Yes, that's right.
Where
Standard
you
eight.
guys
Yeah.
joined, you
Mm.
know. And this was right about the time that I was just finally beginning to establish my academic hold on the class. And here comes Glenn Hurlow.
Lisa, it was good to have competition. I think, like the saying goes, iron sharpens iron.
It was healthy competition, and I enjoyed it because it made me feel like, oh, like striving for better, but not in a way that I punish myself. Just
Right. Yeah.
I have a lot of varied memories of high school, but the one that always stands out, and this is not what people would expect. People always expect me to talk about music and stuff, but my
Mm.
favorite memory of high school is how sport was approached. We all had to do it.
Right. Yes.
You didn't have a choice. You had to do it. You were not marked if you couldn't. It was not your thing. Like,
Yeah.
you're going to try everything. I mean, guys, I tried high jump. And also, you were particularly good at sport. I was particularly loud at sport. You were particularly good at sport. Um, what do you think is what is there a need for this? What did you do? You do you feel that you got something good out of that experience in an Adventist high school?
I did, Lisa. I think I really, sport was the one aspect that helped me a lot to fit in at Helderberg High School,
Ah,
in the dormitory as well as in the school, because um, my schooling up till that point, I'd spent 2 years at Hillcrest, which was a secondary school. So we did standard 6 and standard 7 at Hillcrest in a class of like 8 people. So it was a very small school. Um, I was there with Charlie Beale, and we used to play cricket on the cement outside. But sport was never huge at Hillcrest,
mm,
and we always heard these stories about this big school, Helderberg, and the sport programs there. And so arriving at Helderberg, and it was so interesting hearing you and Rian talk about fitting in at Helderberg, sort of
mm,
being seen as different and fitting in, and it really resonated because although I didn't, it was a predominantly white school. So from that
mm,
perspective, as a white person, it wasn't unusual or different for me to be there.
mm,
But um, I grew up in a mission hospital in Lesotho, where we went to school. There was, I think, probably like 13 or 14 of us in one room across all 7 grades.
oh my
I was the only
word.
person in my grade for most of my early school career. And so then Hillcrest was big compared to that. And then coming to Helderberg was even bigger. And then I
Wow.
subsequently realized that Helderberg was still a very small school. But
I didn't know that.
so being, yeah. So, and yeah, I'd like to share more of that with you later. But talking about the sport, it was good because I'm naturally gifted in my genes. It's nothing that I've really achieved. I've got the right genes for running, just like you have the right genes for cheerleading, and you were a fantastic cheerleader.
There you go, everybody.
Even though she was a Helder, the two sports houses at Helderberg were the Helder and the Bergies. And for your
Mhm.
international viewers, maybe we should explain what the Bergies and the Helder mean. So Helder so it was split. The word Helderberg was split up into two: the Helder and the Bergies. And the Helder in Afrikaans, a Held is a hero. So they were the heroes, the
Mhm.
red team, and that was definitely right up Lisa's street. And then the other team were the Bergies, and Bergies are like vagrants or homeless people who live on the mountain.
Mm.
And I don't know if you can say homeless these days in the politically correct environment. Maybe we should
Yeah.
say differently housed people.
Yes.
But so that was a big rivalry, and clearly there was a rivalry between the cheerleading teams and the sports teams. And I'll never forget. I think while you were there anyway, the Helder always were the best cheerleading team, even if you didn't always win all the athletic stuff and the swimming. But it was good fun. And you know we moaned a bit because we used to do our athletics on the soccer field, which was a very small soccer field. So when you ran around the
Yeah.
track, the corners are very tight, so you couldn't get up to proper speed. And as the guys who were more athletic, we always wished we were at bigger schools where they had proper coaches, not the
Mm,
history teacher standing in as the PT
mm,
teacher and the
mm,
athletics coach and stuff. But looking back, I'm really grateful for that time because, as you say, everyone was included. Everyone had to do it, and because we weren't competing in a very competitive environment with other schools, there wasn't the stigma of, oh, you didn't make the team.
yes.
When it was time to play soccer, everybody played soccer. When it was time to do whatever we did, everyone was included, and I think that's important. It is important. I would like to see more of a structured approach to sport or to fitness at our schools, though. And I'm still connected to Helderberg High School. My wife is a teacher there now.
Oh,
She started last year,
oh,
and she
awesome.
teaches English at Helderberg High School. So I kind of am in touch with what goes on. And I think there's two things that are really good about a sports program. One is the individual benefits. So the fitness and the health is great.
Mm,
But the other thing is that if there's team sports, learning how to play in a team and work together as a team is really good preparation for life and for the rest of what you're going to do. So I would like to see more structure there. I think it would be beneficial. But then the other thing is, um, when you are playing against other schools in sport, whether it's sports days, etc., you get the opportunity to connect outside what can be a very closed little
Yes.
Adventist bubble.
Yes.
And I think there'd be huge benefit if we were given whatever opportunity we were able
Mm.
to build those bridges, to connect with other people, to connect with other schools, just to get Adventist philosophies out there, and to
Mm.
also allow people to build friendships,
Yes.
outside of what can be a very small and closed community.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was just amening now all the time because, like, those were my reasons for loving sport. Is that I learned those lessons. It wasn't.
Mm.
I don't know why I was on every team, but you just explained it because we all had to play. Because I remember
Yeah.
being on the netball team, and I'm not the world's greatest netballer. I remember Mrs. Kutzum
So,
forcing us all to take a turn at being shooter. I mean, look at my
yeah.
size and look at, and we used the basketball
Hoops.
hoop.
Yeah.
So I mean, really. Anyway, we all had
Yeah.
to have a turn. So those kinds of things, they stay with us without us realizing, and it's definitely something to be picked up, in our
Yeah.
Adventist schools, but also from the church. There's no
Yes.
reason why the church doesn't pay more attention to this too. And for a while, it was pretty good, but it's seriously and quickly died down.
Yeah, I think because it's not as much, and that's why I said, we need a more structured approach. It's not part of the Adventist philosophy of education. I think there's more of a focus on doing work and being physically active, but not really included as a priority in the education. So when you have teachers and principals who are keen, then it gets done. And then when they move on and other people aren't that into sport, then the program tends to suffer. So yeah, it has ups and
Yeah.
downs.
Yeah, I'm telling you. And yeah, so that's why I think that's why we have these memories and we need to share them because they're memories that could inspire someone, to get something to
Yeah,
happen again. And
yeah.
speaking of high school, so wait, I want to start somewhere else. You work
Cool.
at UCT.
Yes.
We were colleagues then for 7 years and I didn't know
Oh
it.
wow. Well, I joined in 2016.
Okay, so
So
I've been
I'm
there
not sure
already.
what time.
Yeah,
Okay.
I joined in 2013.
Okay. And you're still there
No, no,
in
no,
the,
no.
are
I've
you,
left already. I
okay.
worked at med school. I was a division manager
Right.
there in one of the
Okay.
divisions.
Right.
But I've left to
You do your own
MD.
thing.
Mm,
That's great.
yeah.
That's awesome.
And this is part of it. So,
Yeah.
but did you?
Yeah. No, UCT was I've been there for 5 years now since I started in 2016, and I'm still introduced as the new guy because people stay there. People tend to stay there for a very long time, a lot of people, and it is a huge organization
Mm,
to get to grips with. And you can work in, I mean, if you work in Faculty of Health Sciences, that's an area where, especially because it's sort of off main campus,
mm,
etc.,
mm.
you could be working for a completely different organization.
Yes, yes.
And I keep coming across little units and little departments that are all part of UCT. It's a huge landscape. I mean, 30,000 students, 6,000 staff. So
Yeah, it would to
it's
trust
a
you
lot
to
to
get
get
the
used to.
numbers right because I was trying to think now how many staff. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, did you think when you left high school with your plans? I mean, you were going to study at UCT. I remember that you were going to study engineering.
Mm.
You know,
I
um,
was. So I was very interested in engineering from the beginning of matric. But as matric progressed and as my love of surfing also increased, I didn't spend enough time in front of the science and maths textbooks. And so accounting had always come really easy to me. I got the accounting framework, and once you get that, then
yes.
it's not too difficult. So I realized that it would be tough for me to get into an engineering program. So I applied to the commerce faculty to become a CA, because it was a combination of, accounting isn't so bad. I can do quite well without much effort, and I can drive a BMW in a short space of time. So it was attractive. That was the way I was thinking at that point. Yeah.
There were a few of the regular watchers of conversations that just went yay at this moment. At that
Right.
uh, so I mean, I like hearing, how people allowed what they wanted to do to influence what they actually did,
Mm,
and that's great. I mean, it was a huge thing for me to stop doing science, because I
yeah.
just couldn't take it anymore. When it got to vectors,
Mm,
and I just realized that the test I wrote, I failed, and I'm sure Glenn got an A plus 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 plus. So I chose to do history instead. That change for me was already like huge.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so the directions that and that's a small thing. The directions that our lives
Yeah.
take often,
Yeah.
surprise us.
They really do. And I mean, I think you make the decision around subject choice when you like 15, 16.
Exactly. What do you
And
know?
when you like, what do you know? I was 17 when I left high school and had to choose which degree I was going to study. And that's way too young. You've got no idea, really. And I think in our country, we can't afford what they do in the US, for example, where your undergraduate is pretty much a generalized degree,
Yes. Yeah.
and then you specialize afterwards. So you get exposed to a lot of different fields. You get exposed
Mm,
to classical subjects,
mm.
really. And that I think is a much better way to do it, because by that time you 21, 22, you've got a
Yes.
bit of a better idea of who you are, what your skills are, and you've been exposed to the world. But to ask 17, 18-year-olds, to pick, they're dedicated, I want to be a CA or an engineer or a doctor. Yeah, it's and we can't really afford not to have that done, because we need to push people through the higher education
Mhm.
system
Yeah.
within 4 or 5 years, so that they can get out and be productive in the economy. But
Mhm.
I think it does end up meaning that a lot of people, like I did, completely change their career path
Mm,
quite soon, or
mm.
multiple times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, multiple times too. I was just thinking that as well. I think these are all just these are all just nuances of life that are different for every human being. So we all try to find a path that is sort of generally okay for everybody to follow, to
Yeah.
suggest. But it doesn't always work, and that's okay. I know that there are some people watching this who need to hear that that's okay. You can change
Yeah.
again, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
So speaking of Helderberg High School, now Helderberg Church, the church on campus. Um, I heard about second service and so on, and I was very intrigued by this idea. And then I had friends who attend there quite regularly, and they're always telling me, "You gotta come," and we've just never had that opportunity yet. And then I followed the Facebook page, and then I listened to a sermon that you preached. And I'm thinking, this is Glenn, guys. This is Glenn who's preaching. And
Uh,
um, then I think somebody told me that you a leader in the church. What's second service about?
yeah, so it is quite a journey, as you're saying, and I think part of it is that second chance fact of life that is so important, because as we were talking about, we make career decisions when we're really young, and often, especially for us who are probably second, or at least second, or maybe third, fourth generation Adventists, growing up in the church,
Mm,
there's always going to be a time where you question that and you do something different. And my time at university and shortly after that was my time for exploring and deciding that was I an Adventist just because I'd been born an Adventist, or was I an Adventist because that was what I really wanted? And
mm,
we can talk more about that. But to get to your question around second service, that's kind of what drove that whole process, was thinking back to that time when I was a student, and if I'd been invited by an Adventist friend of mine, if I wasn't Adventist, to a church at
mm,
that point, what would my experience have been?
Mm.
Because we started second service in 2016,
Mhm.
and it was after recognizing that, our kids who were in their teens weren't really engaged with church,
Yeah.
and starting to think, well, what can we do? What's the problem? And what really kicked it off was I had a visit. I was an elder by that time. I'd been, I taught Sabbath school classes and had been asked to be an elder. And I was visited by one of the members who said, I'm speaking on behalf of about 6 families. We're really seriously considering leaving the church because we're just not finding that we're being spiritually fed. We're not finding that there's opportunities to serve. And so we then put together a series of business meetings. We did a survey amongst our members to say, well, what's the problem? What do you think should need? And boy, the first 2 business meetings and the responses to the survey were just a long list of problems. This is what's wrong
Wow.
with the church. This is what I don't like. This is what I think should be done. This is what and the survey actually told me something that we hadn't asked about, because we had asked about, please give your demographics.
Mm.
And so we got the long list of complaints. People felt all kinds of things were wrong, and they weren't happy with a whole bunch of things. And then I looked at the demographics, and I saw that, the percentage of members between 20 and 40 or even 50 was so small. We had
Mhm.
families with younger kids, and then we had the older people. And so I was struck by the fact that the responses we were getting were from people who weren't going to leave the church, really,
Yeah.
the majority. And so we had to stop being inward focused. We had to stop thinking about what makes me happy to be at church, and we had to start getting outward focused. That was the whole epiphany that I had, is that because I was originally thinking, part of the problem is we had multiple churches on campus. So we have Helderberg College Church, we have Silverleaf Church, and we have All Nations Church. And so in my thinking, a solution to the problem of people being unhappy and going church hopping on the churches on campus was to merge and join together. And that was Glenn's solution straight away. And I was, starting to have conversations with other churches to get that going. But I was praying very hard through this whole time. And what God slowly started to put on my heart was to say, you've got to stop trying to meet the needs of the people who are already in church, and start trying to focus on the people that are not in church, or the people that have left church and don't want to come back. Why, and what do we need to do?
Wow.
And I started walking into church on a Sabbath thinking, if I was here for the first time, what would my experience be? And then you suddenly start seeing things like you have to come in and then walk downstairs to this dark stairwell and then go into the church building, and there's no signs. And if I wanted to go to the bathroom, how would I know? How would I get there? How many people smile at me on the way in? And once I'm, if I make it into the sanctuary and I'm seated there, what happens in front? Does that relate to me? Does it speak to me? I've got someone standing up and saying, next year at GYC, we might send people from the Cape Conference, and if the Pathfinders are meeting this afternoon, and and for someone who isn't in that culture, it's a completely different language. And you kind of like, okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on, there's a lot of programs, there's a lot of organizations, but where's God? And then you might sing a hymn, and again, I don't want to get into the whole worship wars. To me, the issue I have with music in church isn't so much that the hymns aren't beautiful, and I don't appreciate organ music every now and then, but it's more the language they're written in and the time they were written for is so different to the way people are used to hearing praise expressed now. And then you might hear about God in the sermon, if it's not about the mark of the beast or other things. So we just decided we needed to get outward focused. We needed to put together a worship service that was centered around one purpose. And the purpose that God placed on our heart was connection. We needed to connect, first of all, with God as our creator and as the supreme object of our worship, as someone who deeply desired to connect with us and was just waiting there saying, please finish with your 10-minute long announcements and all of that, and just connect with me. I'm here. You guys have got here to meet with me. Why are you doing all these other things? So we redesigned the whole liturgy, the order of service, to put an emphasis on worship and praise. So we spend half an hour singing together, because that really sets the scene. So we try and take away all the distractions, the long announcements, etc., from the beginning. We get into praise as soon as possible. We really select the songs and what the worship leaders say from the front to build to this crescendo, to just be in a place where we can connect with God, and then ready to hear the message, which again, we really try and make Christ-centered and Jesus-focused and practical, so that on Monday morning, when someone thinks about what they heard in church on Sabbath, it can apply to their lives. It has meaning for them, So, I'm really passionate about what we've managed to do, because we've had people who haven't been in church since they were teenagers or since they were in high school, and they had to go to church, otherwise they were marked absent on the register, come back. People who were really not feeling like they're fitted in anywhere come, and they say just the atmosphere at second service is just, there's a warmth and there's a welcoming that they don't often find in other Adventist churches. And so, that's the story of 2S, or 2S Connect, as we call it, because our purpose really is, number one, connect with God. Number two, connect with each other. And so via small groups, via social media platforms we have, WhatsApp groups, we try and build those connections with each other. And then the third part, which I'm really, is growing, and I really want to focus on, is connect to our community. So, don't just become insular again. I'm very wary of that happening. Connect to our community. And the way we've chosen to focus on that is not to start our own outreach programs or anything. We've looked for organizations in our community that are already working. So we've partnered with a foster home where 25 kids are fostered, and we work with them. We've partnered with an AIDS orphan NGO in the area. We've partnered with soup kitchens and those things, all where there's already a critical mass. People are doing things, but they need support. And so we've jumped in and supported. And that does two things for us. One, it creates more connections with those people who are involved in doing those things. And then two, it takes away the pressure of having to build a whole outreach program from scratch and maintain it. And, it's so difficult to do that. So, that's what we focus on.
You've just given language to a picture that I was struggling to finalize in my head, and I can so see it. And I want everybody to hear about it, because, you can do this. It didn't take someone from GC to come and set that church up. It's doable.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to ask you, if being I don't know how many generations down Adventist you are, as I am, whether it's influenced you in any way. But you know what? I think it's pretty obvious.
It's a very interesting question, because I am proud of the fact that my great grandfather came out as a missionary in the early 1900s, and super proud of my dad and my grandfather who followed in his footsteps and were missionaries as well. Growing up in that little mission hospital I spoke about was an amazing childhood to have. And I think that legacy is something I've always felt that I need to honor. And it's more of a legacy of service, I think, than necessarily being a legacy of being an Adventist, because those two things should be the same, but often aren't. So it definitely has an influence. Like I say, I rebelled against it for a while. I felt like a real backward country bumpkin coming to the big city after being in
I can't believe it.
Yeah, and so it took me a while. I really had a deep desire to be popular, to be accepted, and I did a lot of things, and I spent a lot of time and effort on things to achieve that, which in hindsight was a total waste. I wish I could, do that over, but that's all part of the journey.
Same here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're right, it's all part of the journey, because I mean, that's what makes us know what not, what not to.
Yes.
Um,
Exactly.
I was
Yeah.
just thinking, I have this thing about passing stuff on,
Mm.
institutional memory is something that I easily pick up. It's just a skill that I have.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I am intrigued and interested in whichever space I'm in. I'm always wondering about how does the message get passed along, and it's not the textbook; it's the rest of the message. So there are
Yes.
textbook messages about from the Bible itself about how young people should be involved in church or not, or whether in leadership or what. There are clear guidelines about leadership and the kinds of character that we're looking for, in a leader. Um, and I can't help but wonder, you know, what do we need to do? Because
Mm.
it's still not, it's young people are not as involved in leadership in church for a number of
Yes.
reasons. But I mean, I'd love to hear your take on it, as a takeaway for everyone.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I I think we have a bit of a crisis on our hands, to be honest,
Mm,
and it's a crisis that has been accelerated by COVID, because church, if we thought church was coming together once a week in a building, that doesn't happen. And so for a lot of people, church is kind of disintegrated and crumbled. And I think the undercurrents of other things happening prior to the pandemic have just made that worse. So the Adventist church has grown to be this massive administrative and bureaucratic organization. And I think um, fewer and fewer people identify with those sort of on an organizational level these days. It's much more about it being an individual. And so for my grandparents, for my parents, it was great to say we belong to this worldwide church, and we've got the most education institutions and hospitals outside of like the Catholic Church,
mm.
and that was a big thing for kids these days. That doesn't matter,
No, it doesn't.
and I think I think there aren't there isn't the desire to be part of a global bureaucratic organization, especially because it moves so slowly. It
Yes.
takes forever to get anything done. And so where there's scope for younger people to get involved is in local churches. And I think
Mm,
um, there are some exciting things happening. I mean, I look at another colleague from UCT, Craig Alexander, and Gavin van der Fint involved in Next Level Living, that kind
yes.
of thing.
Yes.
There are some things, but for the most part, I think kids are not interested in taking leadership of an organization that requires a church board meeting to decide on every little thing. Um,
Yes.
and we have to, as part of the reinvention of what church is now post COVID, when we're
Mm,
looking at what do we actually mean as church,
mm,
um, we need to dismantle the sort of management and admin structures in churches to make us more agile. And I
mm,
think that'll be part of the secret in attracting younger people to join us. If they know they can join, and if you ask them on a Sunday to be part of something, and by Wednesday we can be doing something, that'll make a huge difference. Um, and it's going to take a while because I think we've lost that opportunity to get them involved, to break down just the excruciatingly slow decision making process and the hoops that we jump through to do anything.
mm,
And a
mm.
lot of them have lost interest and are doing their own thing. And I think part of the solution is to just give people more freedom and give them more trust.
Mm.
Yeah.
Woo! That's that's music to my ears. Um, I really think I really think that there are things, as you've outlined, that we can do, and that possibly, um, I don't want to talk about a silver lining, but the upside of the situation that we find ourselves
Mm.
in is that, there's change anyway. There's no new normal, there's
Yeah.
only new. So it's as
Yeah.
good a time as any to expand our thinking. And that's why people like you guys, what you are doing at Second Service for me is that kind of expanded thinking, that will just widen the doors, and that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
Not actually having such a hectic screening process, that by the time people get to the door, they don't even know why they're there anymore.
Yeah. No, it's a problem. And I think one of the key things is getting back to authentic worship. We have always worked as a church that we have church every Sabbath. That's
Mm,
our thing. And we've got the elders sitting on their chairs behind watching the preachers back the whole time. We've got all these things that we do, which really don't make a huge amount of sense. And then we will like, okay, we're going to do a campaign. So we'll get the
mm,
youth to go drop leaflets
mhm.
in everyone's
That's right.
post boxes, and we'll rent it at the town hall, and we will do a revelation seminar. And that's how we'll get people into the church. And we don't know. And I really, Lisa, I love the Adventist church. I think, we really have so much going for the church. I don't want to come across as knocking it, but I also think that we need to change the way we think about it. And Sabbath in church is an opportunity every week to do outreach.
Mm,
If our services are outward focused and open and welcoming to people, you don't have to wait for a reaping campaign or a harvest cycle,
mm,
where we start with in-reach and then we do outreach. Every Sabbath should be a good Sabbath to invite someone from work or someone from school or someone from next door to come and worship with you. That's your outreach program every
mm.
Sabbath.
I mean, it's awesome.
And yeah, it is. It's such a great opportunity. And I think once we get the worship right, and we're coming back to young people again, once we connect them
Mm,
with a God who really cares, who really is involved in their lives and doesn't require you to get 20 honors on your Pathfinder sash before you can, get baptized and get involved. But a
mm,
God who is right there, right now, in touch. Um, and the worship is right and your worship is authentic, then your other programs and your outreach and the way that the church members live their lives will change.
mm.
And that's where it's got to start for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I'm just imagining, I'm imagining a world where, oh, at least I'm imagining a Cape Town where there is, this, it will be like a buzzing, in the Adventist community, but
Mm,
the buzzing will be
yeah.
felt by those, around us, and we don't have that attractiveness anymore. And it's not an attractiveness that is
Mm,
is based on structure and on principle. Well, it's based on principle, but not structure and not things that you can see, not even tangible stuff. It's the
yeah.
light that Adventists have,
Mm,
and for me,
yeah.
I could always sorry, when I was younger, I could always spot an Adventist. There's just something, they have to say two words and I'll
Yeah.
know, this one is an Adventist. These days it's a lot harder,
Mm,
and there's a reason for that. So we need to tackle all these things. We need to pay attention, um,
yeah. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's this.
No, and Ellen White says that there's nothing so attractive as a loving and lovable Christian.
There you go.
And I think we've kind of ignored that part and taken the peculiar people part a bit too seriously. Don't wear earrings and don't wear pants to church. But
Yes, so important. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, I mean, it was great. It's great speaking to you about this. I mean, I can't believe our time is up, but it's been great speaking to someone my age who feels the same way that I do about our church, and who is
yeah,
standing there doing what he can. I mean, I love that. I feel that if I can appeal to all the Adventists my age, our age, okay, you know who you are. I'm not going to give the ages so that you can work it out. You know who you are. Um, just think about that atmosphere of worship where there are no holds
yeah,
barred. You can raise your hands, you can kneel if you want to. Where worship
yeah,
is an experience that is as much a part of why we get together on a Sabbath as anything. you know. There is
Absolutely.
such a world. There is such a world, and it can be made possible by us. Glenn, you're inspirational.
Yeah.
You still are. You still are. I will forgive you that you got an A in English, which is my favorite subject. But
Well, I
it's
think both our favorite teacher, though. I really
oh, man.
give our teacher credit. Yeah,
Oh,
Mrs.
she was
Woods.
she made us love English. I really love that class.
Yeah.
Um, but Glenn, it's been
Yeah.
awesome talking to you again, and it's also been awesome getting into your head a little bit about how you see the world. I love that. So everything of the best. Tell UCT I say hi.
Will do.
And yeah, I send my regards to your family. And I see both your kids involved in church. I just think you've just struck gold with what God wants to do in your life through this second service. So thank you so
I've
much.
been so thanks, Lisa. And yeah, in regards to you and your very lovely daughter, and just to say, to finish off, it's been I've sort of worked for the church in volunteer capacities for a long time, as a treasurer, as an elder, as a Sabbath school teacher, etc., etc., etc. And for the last, since second service started, I've probably spent twice as much time as I ever did in church
Mm,
and working for the church,
mm.
but it feels twice as good as it ever did.
Oh,
God is really blessed, and it doesn't feel like work. We're super excited about doing it and about getting involved. And God has done amazing things.
oh,
And yeah, once you're connected to Him
mm,
and you just keep praying, please use me to connect to other people.
absolutely.
He does amazing things. So I've been so blessed, and thank you to you as well for reaching out, to connecting with me. And I think your website, it speaks. We must speak again sometime. But I know you've been on a journey and
Yes.
shared things that I didn't know about you,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I know it's helping a lot of people to process and heal. And I'm super proud of you, Lisa.
Ah, thank
It's
you.
really a privilege to know you.
Thank you so, so, so much. And we'll talk
Yeah.
soon. All right.
We will.
Maybe
Take
even
care.
at second service. See you.
Yes, we'd like to see you there.
Thanks, eh?